Before you come at me with a flurry of dislikes, I'd like to point out that I have previously done a video of why Plant vs Zombies 1 is better than Plant vs Zombies 2. Now, I present to you the payback list. Simple concept really, just advantages the second game has over the first. Not much to explain here, so I'll go through the honourable mentions and then we'll get onto the list. First of all, and immediately a slightly controversial one, the levelling system. I happen to enjoy this feature, and it makes levels a lot easier when replaying them.
But who replays levels?
I'll get onto that later. I also like the unique buffs some plants get, such as the Fire Pea Shooter's Napalm Pea and the Hot Potato's Octopus Melting ability. Only problem I have is it makes some levels a bit too easy, so I wouldn't mind a setting that turns the feature off. Secondly, I prefer the background music. I mean, Laura Shigihara is a genius and all, but the first game doesn't have this. I think the second game's soundtrack is more diverse as well and captured the essence of the worlds perfectly. In fact, I would have made this part of the main list if it wasn't for EA removing the demonstration minigame and Ultimate Battle music a couple of years ago. Another personal preference I have is the graphics, especially when comparing plants that appeared in both games. Why the Spikeweed turd coloured? Why did the Starfruit look like he took heaps of weed? Although I will say that I do prefer the Gravebuster's Garden Warfare 1 design. And lastly, I like that PvZ2 has costumes, or skins if you will, but this is a purely cosmetic feature, and they're rarely obtained in pinata parties these days, so it's just kept as an honourable mention. First reason, it has online features. Pinata parties, arena, Penny's Pursuit are all limited games that change on a regular basis, so players always have something to do. Pinata parties in particular function as a daily challenge, unless you're an old timer who remembers when they're only playable on Mondays and Thursdays. The second game is also still being supported, which allows for frequent updates and seasonal changes. After all, who doesn't want to fight a giant walking cake? Reason number 2, more replay value. This one is obviously subjective, but in my experience replaying levels is a lot more fun on the second game. This is for a variety of reasons, including the level diversity, levels being generally shorter than if you play Adventure 2 on the first game, not to mention the turbo button quickening the pace, and the fact it rewards you with a CPEG pinata for winning them. The fact new plants are still being added also gives it extra points, as you can replay levels to try out new plants. The third reason I have to play PvZ2 over PvZ1 is plant food. This is a great concept that can massively help you out when in a pinch, accumulate a ton of sun in no time, or easily win some Save Our Seeds levels. It may put potato mines out of a job when you can deal the same kind of damage by giving plant food to a pea shooter, but honestly, who cares? Big loss, boo-hoo. It's also a lot of fun trying it out on a new plant for the first time. Well, assuming that plant isn't a moonflower, of course. While you can only store 3 at once at first, you can get 2 more slots from playing through worlds and buying the other, which I don't recommend, but that's just me. Regardless, plant food is a great way to turn the tide when things get difficult. Number 4 is that there are less limited plants on the second game. What I mean by that is there are numerous plants on PvZ1 that are only useful in a handful of levels, either due to being environmental or being a specific counter to a zombie. Umbrella Leaf, Cactus, Blover, Gravebuster, all plants that you won't use often. Generally in Plant vs Zombies 2, the only plants I like this are ones that only serve a purpose in one world, like Spring Bean or Tangle Kelp. The Gold Leaf is one that does suffer from limited use, although she's good to use when replaying Lost City, and Gravebuster used to be fairly meaningless, but then Dark Ages came along and it became an ideal plant in that world. And finally on the list is that there are simply more worlds. The first game has 5 worlds with 10 levels each, and the second game has 11 worlds with varying numbers of levels. Granted, the first game does have Adventure 2, which is a harder version of the main game, but with Crazy Dave picking 3 plants for you, a concept that I thought was a bit rubbish to be honest. And it has minigames, which I did detail on the first video. But the second game should hold off your boredom for longer, as there's so much more to do. Even when the game first came out, there were 3 worlds with 24 levels each, totaling up to 72 levels, for those too lazy to do the maths. More than the first game's 50 levels. Also, the level diversity is a shout. While some objectives are plain frustrating, they threw some fun ones in there, such as Save Our Seeds, Locked and Loaded, which is much more fair than the old 3 pre-picked plant nonsense in the first game. And unique brain busters such as Bulb Bowling and Sun Bombs, and thus it's the better game in my opinion. Those are 5 reasons why PvZ2 beats PvZ1. But please check out the other list if you haven't already, leave the video a like, and if you're new, please subscribe.